Whose phone is that?
It's too.
There's
They
no
still don't
lights.
work.
Yeah, it won't.
But
Roll call.
Festerson. Gray. Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Mr. President.
Here, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for remarks by the Council President today, me. Well, no earth-shattering, exciting news. As you might imagine, it's Thanksgiving week, so my remarks today will be addressed to this holiday. And what I'd like to try to encourage people to do in what seems to be recent times of people getting behind their computer screens and what I call having cyber courage and sending nasty grams out without really thinking about them. Maybe during this holiday period and Thanksgiving, before you hit send, maybe you put it in the draft box of your email and think about what you're thankful for, what you have gratitude for, and maybe a way to reconstruct your message in a more constructive, positive way in a spirit of thanks and Thanksgiving. So let's have a good meeting.
An affidavit of publication is on file for the pre-council and city council meeting, and a current copy of the Open Meeting Act is posted in a white binder on the east wall of the legislative chambers.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Omaha City Council. We thank you for being with us here today. As a courtesy to those in attendance and to assist in the conduct of the city's business, we ask that you turn off or silence any cell phones or electronic devices. Madam Clerk.
Item 6, a resolution to approve the preliminary plat for Blue Sage Creek 2, located northeast of 213th and F Streets. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
The public hearing on item 6 begins at this time. Are there any proponents? The mics are not on. Do you have a... Hold on. Hold on just a second. Try now.
Got it now? You want me to start over?
What'd you say your name was again, sir?
For the record. No, it's Larry Jobin, 11440 West Center Road, appearing on behalf of Land Office Civic, Inc. In connection with the second phase of Blue Sage Creek. I just wanted to say I hope everyone was watching your vacation. I think it's a great message, so hopefully a lot of people are watching. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. This is kind of a small second phase of the existing Blue Sage Creek subdivision.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray. Harding.
Yes.
Melton.
Yes.
Pauls. Palermo.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 6 is approved, 7-0. Item 7, a resolution to approve the preliminary plat for Deer Crest, located southeast of 114th and State Streets. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
The public hearing on item 7 begins at this time. Are there any proponents?
Good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the council. My name is Mark Johnson. My address is 11440 West Center Road. Appearing today on behalf of the applicant, here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray. Harding.
Yes.
Melton.
Yes.
Pauls.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 7 is approved, 7-0. Items 8 to 12 can be considered together for Marvely, located at 132nd and 4th Streets. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. Items 8 and 9 are ordinances to rezone this property from LC District to LC District and DR District. Item 10, an ordinance to amend the boundaries of the MCC overlay district to incorporate this property into that district. Item 11, a resolution to approve the final plat for Marvely. Item 12, a resolution to approve the Marvely subdivision agreement.
The public hearing on items 8 through 12 begin at this time. Are there any proponents?
Yes, thank you, council members. Kobe Pritchard, 715 8th Street, Boone, Iowa, with Fairway. Just at least want to say a big thank you. We are really excited to bring our presence to Northwest Omaha, and this is a project we're excited about. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray. Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
8 through 12 are approved, 7-0. Items 13 to 16 can be considered together for Town Center West, located at 204th Street and West Center Road. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. Item 13, an ordinance to rezone this property from AG District to MU District. Item 14, an ordinance to approve a mixed-use district development agreement for this property. Item 15, a resolution to approve the final plat for Town Center West. Item 16, a resolution to approve the Town Center West subdivision agreement.
The public hearing on item 13 through 16 begins at this time. Are there any proponents?
Yes, Mr. President, members of the council, Larry Jobin, 11440 West Center Road, appearing on behalf of the applicant. This is the first phase of a two-phase development. The first phase has 5 lots and 2 outlots. It will be used for mixed uses, the typical customary ones you see in this kind of a development. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. It is on the northwest corner of 204th and West Center Road.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Items 13 through 16 are approved, 7-0. Items 17 and 18 are to consider Class D liquor license applications for Moe's Mart Number 5, located at 8242 Maple Street, and Moe's Mart Number 6, located at 720 North 108th Court. And
There'll be one public hearing, 2 votes. The public hearing on items 17 and 18 begin at this time. Are there any
the
proponents?
public hearing was closed last week.
Is the applicant here? Okay. The clerk reminds me we already conducted the public hearing, so I'll close what I just opened. And we see no applicant. Under the rules of the council, the applicant's required to be here, but this is our last available opportunity to take action to make a recommendation to the Liquor Commission. Before we make a recommendation, I'd like Mr. Wiesen to come down and present some evidence that he's found with regard to the applicant in terms of actually when they took over this business versus when, in fact, the evidence shows that they did. Mr. Wiesen, you're recognized.
Ryan Wiesen, Assistant City Attorney. In researching some of the representations that were made and the operation of the business in question, the licensee, initially we were under the impression that they began operations on October 22nd, 2019. That's when the temporary operating permit was issued by the Nebraska Liquor Control Commission. However, in reviewing some of their documentation, we did discover this bill of sale in which the previous license holder, White Oak Station, had sold to the current applicant, White Oak Management, quote, all of the seller's right, title, and interest in and to the beer, wine, and liquor inventory of the seller located at 8242 Maple Street in Omaha, Nebraska, and that was dated September 1st, 2019. Nebraska Revised Statute, Section 53-149, states in relevant part, quote, in the absence of such temporary operating permit, the purchaser shall not manufacture, store, or sell alcoholic liquor on the purchase premises until the purchaser has obtained a license in the purchaser's own name. So it would appear from this documentation that at a minimum, the applicant was storing alcoholic liquor that it had purchased at the licensed premises for at least a month and a half prior to the temporary operating permit being issued by the commission, and may have in fact been selling it as well. Additionally, there have been some communications, I believe, made to the finance department where they are under the impression that the applicant may have been operating since as early as April or May, although I don't know that I have any documentation to verify that at this time. And there is an additional management agreement that the applicant had executed for the management of this location as of August 1st, 2019. So there are several questions as to when the applicant actually did begin operation at this premises, and there is an apparent violation of a liquor statute for, at a minimum, the storing of alcoholic liquor at the licensed premises without a temporary operating permit or other license.
And the applicant was here last meeting and did admit to operating for some time. He did not have an exact date, but I think the record would reflect that. What's the will of the council? Mr. Festerson.
Thanks, Mr. President. So one of these is in my district, and one I believe is in Councilmember Milton's district. And these are longstanding businesses that I don't wish any ill will towards, but I don't have any confidence in what we've seen from the evidence presented today and also from testimony last week, and zero follow-up since then on issues we brought to their attention about uncollected taxes and concern about the timing of the license, and what seemed to be no understanding or really interest in understanding our local liquor laws. So based on those things, I would recommend denial today.
Okay, we're going to have two different votes because we want to send up individual recommendations. So can I have the motion on item 17, please?
Motion to deny number 17.
Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Harding.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls. Palermo.
Yes.
Mr. President,
Yes.
motion passed 7-0.
Is there a same motion with same rationale on item 18? Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray. Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo.
Yes.
Mr. President,
Yes.
motion passed 7-0. Item 19, an application to consider a Class C liquor license for Fan Tan Club located at 5915 Center Street.
Hold on. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good morning, Heather Horst appears on behalf of the applicant. My address is 6519 Sunshine Drive. The applicant couldn't be here today. She called me 30 minutes before the hearing. She found her sister deceased, so she's dealing with the coroner right now. I would like to move ahead with this proceeding if you'll allow it.
Well, before you go too far, Ms. Horst, one of the things the council learned at the pre-council meeting was that the business has an outstanding debt to the city in terms of the restaurant tax. And so what we typically do when we have time before a recommendation is due to the commission is we lay that over for a week to allow the applicant to meet with either the city finance department, Donna Waller, or the city attorney's office to get that straightened out and to make sure that the new operator understands and has a plan for compliance. And so since the rules require that your client be here today in order to take up her application, and we have this other reason to lay it over for a week, that's probably what we're going to do here today.
And it was brought to my attention this morning that they did owe like $9.6 thousand for restaurant taxes from 2015 to, I believe, 2019. And we have been talking to Joe Kalala this morning, working out a payment agreement for that, a payment plan for those back taxes.
Okay, so we'll have that all straightened out. We have plenty of time to do it within the next 7 days, so. Do we meet Tuesday or the following?
We do not. The next meeting is December 10th.
So you'll be back on the 10th. Is there a motion to, and continue the public hearing? Roll call.
Thank you.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray. Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 20, an application to consider a Class CCS liquor license and cigar shop for Hearth Cigar and Pipes located at 9230 Mormon Bridge Road. A's communication from the Chief Building Inspector regarding a permit for the outdoor area.
Public hearing on item 20 begins at this time. Are there any proponents?
Conrad Wilson, as the applicant. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, council members.
You're happy to answer any questions?
Yes, I'll have happy to answer any questions.
You understand that the recommended approval, if given, will be contingent upon obtaining all the proper permits?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Festerson. Yeah, public hearing's closed. Unless there's anyone else who wishes to testify. Okay, public hearing's closed.
So just a couple of questions for you, Mr. Wilson. This is a new business to be located in the Mormon Bridge Plaza, right?
Yes, sir.
So you're right next to Tussie's? Give me some orientation about where your bay is.
Yes, sir. We're across the street from Tussie's.
Oh, great. So we welcome a new business there. That's a nice little plaza area. So it'll be a cigar bar, and there'll be an outdoor area as well?
Yes, sir. We're going to build that in the spring.
Okay. And what will happen in the outdoor area? Is there music and stuff, or is it just
No, sir. Just outdoor seating.
outdoor seating? Great. And any food too, or just cigars and drinks?
No, we're going to rely on Tussie's in the cabin and the Cubby store to provide food if people want to order it, so.
Okay. And then when do you hope to be open?
We're open now as a cigar shop, so.
Okay. And then once you get the liquor license, you'll just
Yes, sir.
continue with the patio and spring, you said?
Yes, sir.
Got it. Great. Well, welcome to that neighborhood.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Well,
having you there.
We're there already, so.
Yeah. And I'll motion to approve, subject to receiving the proper permits.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone? Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray. Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 20 is approved, 7-0. Item 21, an application to consider a Class I liquor license for a Nepali restaurant located at 5478 North 90th Street.
The public hearing on item 21 begins at this time. Are there any proponents?
My name is Duke Tran. I'm a lawyer representing Nepali Restaurant, Inc. In this application for the Class I liquor license. And I'm here to answer any question that you may have. And other than that, I ask for the council approval of the liquor license.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed.
Thank you.
Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray. Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 21 is approved, 7-0. Items 22 and 23 can be considered together for Class I liquor license application for Tanner's Bar and Grill located at 15505 Ruggles Street, number 106, and 1202 South 119th Street.
The public hearing on item 22 and 23 begins at this time. Are there any proponents?
Good afternoon, Julia Plucker, 2804 South 87th Avenue. These are existing businesses. Nothing operationally will change. It's a reorganization in the ownership structure, and these three gentlemen have been owners previously. Any questions?
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray. Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
22 and 23 are approved, 7-0. Consent agenda. Any member of the city council may cause any item placed on the consent agenda to be removed. Items removed from the consent agenda shall be taken up by the city council immediately following the consent agenda in the order in which they were removed, unless otherwise provided by the city council rules of order.
The public hearings on agenda items 24 through 27 were held on November 19. Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray. Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed, 7-0.
The public hearings on agenda items 28 through 57 are today. If you wish to address the city council regarding these items, please come to the microphone, indicate the agenda item number you wish to address, identify yourself by your name, address, who you represent, and if you are a proponent or opponent.
Good afternoon. Lavanya Goodwin, 3116 North 24th Street, and I would like to address items 52 through 57 for the appointments of Mike Maroney, Ralph Lassiter, Ralph Kleinsmith, Samantha Jones, myself, Lavanya Goodwin, and Miranda Adams for the North 24th Street Business Improvement District. This is an exciting moment for us. We've been working on this with property owners in the area for the last year, and this appointment will allow us to move forward in presenting the City Council and the Mayor's Office with our scope of work, which will be litter control, and then in the next year, sidewalk improvement. So we just want to thank the council for your vote of confidence as we move forward in this endeavor. Thank you.
Great. Anyone else wishing to be heard?
Hey, Ben Swan, 2711 North 24th Street, Carnation Ballroom. I'm a property owner in the area, and I will be assessed by the BID, and I'm excited about that because I've seen how much work they put into and how well they utilize the resources that are presently available, and I know that with more authority to collect assessments and do improvements, I'll do a great job. I've been very impressed with what they've done this year.
Thank you.
My name is Ralph Lassiter. I serve as the pastor of Mount Moriah Church. I'm also the president of the corporation as well as Pisgah Incorporated. Even though we are a nonprofit and exempt, we are fully behind the concept of a business improvement district and plan to be fully engaged. We thank you for your support.
My name's Ralph Kleinsmith. I work at Lozier Corporation, and we have a strong vested interest in redeveloping the supportive 24th Street corridor. As you know, Lozier has been a strong supporter of the community for over 60 years, and we look forward to bringing back the history and the houses back in this community. So we're very excited about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Doyce Whitaker, and I'm at 2414 Ames Avenue, and I represent the Most Worship Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Nebraska, and I want to thank you all for supporting this effort of the 24th Street Bid Act. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name's Samantha Jones. My husband and I are the pastors and administrators at the Salvation Army on North 24th Street. We're also a nonprofit, but we are wanting to be fully engaged and supportive financially and with with our hands and our feet and our phones or whatever else is needed. I think it's a really excellent opportunity for us to collaborate and work together, diverse groups, both businesses and nonprofits, for the betterment of North 24th Street.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify on this or any other item on the consent agenda resolutions?
Luis Jimenez, 2205 North 24th Street. I want to speak on the BID. I'm in support. I think this is an appropriate way to revitalize the area. There are other property owners that are contributing, and business owners and community members, for-profit, nonprofit organizations. This is something that's helping the community come together and have discussions, work out plans. But my concern is transparency, and hopefully this will help us move beyond organizational structuring. So I'm not sure if these individuals represent the scope of the BID from Ames to Cummings Street along 24th Street. So that's one thing that I'm going to be looking at and see how engaged the board is with the multi-fold of individuals interested in 24th Street. Thank you.
Thank you. The public hearing is closed. Mr. Gray.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to take the opportunity, first of all, to thank all of you who came down today. And I agree with you, Lavanya. This is a really good day for North Omaha's 24th Street Business Improvement District. And I thank you all for all of the hard work and number of meetings that you all have had to put this together. But I also want to take the opportunity to thank our planning department and our law department, because these things don't happen overnight. And there have been numerous meetings where our folks in law and planning have spent considerable time, overtime, working with the North 24th Street, getting that business improvement district up and off the ground. Specifically, I'd like to thank Bernard Endenbosch, who spends a lot of time working with this, Bridget Hadley, and our planning department, Dave Vanslaw, and all the other folks that are involved in it. This is, I don't know if people realize what I have learned and what some of you all already know, how extensive the work is to get this done. So, I just want to take the opportunity to thank our city folks, because we don't do that, as often as probably we sometimes should. But our city folks, along with our community, have spent a great deal of effort to revitalize this area that is in significant need of redevelopment. Although there are significant things happening, more things can happen. And I just wanted to thank all of those who were involved, and we're going to continue to move forward. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilmember Gray. Councilmember Festerson, you're recognized.
Thanks, Mr. President. Yeah, I just congratulate you all on that work as well, and Councilman Gray also. It is a great step forward for you and for North 24th Street, I believe. And as he alluded to, having gone through a few business improvement district creations myself, it is a lot of work to get to where you've gotten, but if it's encouragement to you, that's the hardest part, is getting the consensus that you've now achieved, and going forward, that'll pay off in terms of your program of work, and we look forward to hearing more about that. So I would motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
28 through 57 are approved, 7-0. Item 58, an ordinance to amend Omaha Municipal Code to establish the salary for the mayor of the city of Omaha for the years 2023 through 2026. A is amendment of the whole requested by Councilmembers Harding and Melton. B is an amendment of the whole requested by Councilmember Gray.
The public hearing was continued, so at this time, we'll open up the public hearing again for any proponents. Are there any opponents?
My name is Ford Momarts. I'm a proponent. Live at 3525 Cummings Street, apartment 2. And I'm in favor of all of the heads of the city, the council and the mayor, getting a raise. I think they are reimbursed way too little for the amount of work that they put in. But I think psychologically, the human mind doesn't grasp percentages as well as they do flat amounts. And I think if you're going to give raises commensurate with the amount of work that they're putting into these offices and have the city pay back to those officials what they truly deserve, I think you would be better off using flat amounts rather than percentages. I think that the voters in the city who are going to approve it, or the council members who are going to have to approve that extra expenditures, would be able to wrap their mind around and to accept, say, paying the mayor $43,000 a year rather than a 15% increase. Somehow 15% increase just sounds like a lot more, or 10% sounds like a lot more even than $43,000 a year. I know it's not, but psychologically that's how it hits the human brain. And I would just like to urge you to consider presenting it in a different format, because I think they deserve that money. I don't think $43,000 for the mayor of Omaha is too much money, but I think it's going to hit other people. 10% is a hell of a lot of money. And I just think you would be more persuasive by using a different terminology. And thank you for considering that.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents?
Larry Store, 5015 Lafayette, Omaha, Nebraska, 68132. The last few days around Nebraska, there's been a lot of stories about there's no money for this, no money for that. I think we need to slow down on some of these pay raises, particularly those that are tied to other cities, other governments, officials. This is Omaha, this is not Minneapolis or Dallas. I don't think the people that might run for mayor are going to move to another city because they can make more money being a mayor there. So let's slow down on that and on the council salaries, and let's make sure that the nursing homes are not closed and people are out on the streets before we raise public official salaries. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents? The public hearing is closed. Councilmember Smith, what's the pleasure? Councilmember Melton.
Well, thanks, and I just wanted to clarify that we're actually on both amendments in number 58 are to raise the salary of the mayor starting in 2022, so it's not our current mayor, it'll be the next mayor. Just wanted that as a clarification piece. And the 122, we actually took cost of living into account. I know that was brought up last week. That the cost of living in California or another state, but when we did the median and we looked at the figures, we actually took into account that, so that the median is median for the cost of living for our city, and not based upon others. And I don't know that was clear last week. You know, I prefer to have a cost of living increase. It could be 1%, it could be 2%, it could be 4%. I would prefer to do it according to the cost of living as opposed to a set 3%, because there's no guarantees for the rest of the city workers that they get a set 3% either. We negotiate those with our union contracts, which I know our lawyer is sitting in the front row, and would tell us there's no 3% guarantee for anybody starting out. So I'm not sure that, and I know Councilman Harding brought that up, I'm not sure that that's the direction we necessarily want to go. So that would be why I did the cost of living increase for both the mayor moving forward and the city council, because we don't necessarily know what that's going to be. But for 7 members of the council, when you're talking about 1%, it's not, 1 or 2%, you'll know ahead of time, but it's not going to be a big dent or something that the budget couldn't handle. I know Ryan Wiesen, our attorney, has looked into it. He assures me that the way we have it worded meets legal muster. I'm getting a shake of the head yes from Ryan back there. So it doesn't give me heartburn. I know Councilman Gray, you have 3%, I have cost of living. I think they're both probably going to be about the same. I would just rather it be the cost of living increase, since the rest of the city workers don't have that 3% guarantee.
Thank you, and since I anticipate
And that would be for both.
number of people talking, I'll just come this way if you wish to be recognized, Councilmember Harding.
Sure, I'll say some similar things that Councilmember Melton just stated, that the reason for the CPI or the Consumer Price Index was that because we don't have a guarantee necessarily when we're negotiating with other organized groups for those increases. This goes a little against what Mr. Bromert, I think, brought up, that whether it's 3% or a cost of living, which you wouldn't know that, and that would be applied each year looking back using the CPI. But I think it's more in line with keeping up with or not ahead of inflation. In my other job in commercial real estate, a lot of times, if I'm representing a landlord, I don't want to see automatic, 3-4% bumps, because that just really escalates what that could be and not reflective of what the market is. And therefore, tying it to a CPI or an index, I think it makes more sense. So I'll be supportive of of both of these, but with the index rather than the 3% bumps.
Go ahead, Mr. Pauls, I'm sorry.
Councilmember Pauls, do you wish to be recognized?
Yeah, I do, because I agree with neither one of them. And I think you've heard me talk about this in the past. We found this magic number 122 because we made comparisons and all that, which I find very ironic, because, see, I could be the superintendent. I know they're different areas, but I just want to say, to me, there's an awful lot of likeness, and you're going to hear some of the same my past comments. The superintendent of OPS, $300,000. Metro College, $300,000. MUD, $200,000+. OPPD, $400,000 or $500,000. I'm trying to think. Let's take a look at what kind of mayor do we want. And I do truly hope we can squeeze another term out of the mayor, because I have personally suggested that she run for governor, but she's not listening to me. So we need to think about the type of mayor that we're going to have in the future, whether it be our present mayor or another one. And I know people do not become mayors because of the salary, because if you look in the past, there have been a number of people running for these positions. But I also think there's a certain degree of respectability with that salary. So I think 122 is what I would call on the downside, because I look past, and I'm just going to go back about 18 years. And out of the 18 years of the mayor, 10 of those years, guess what the increase was? 0% for 10 years. And then 1 year, some of these were self-imposed, I understand, and 1 year it was a drop of 7%. And now we're sitting patting ourselves in the back, CPI 3%. But all those years, you add them up, I'm telling you, out of 18 years, over half of them, well, 10 of them, there was 0% increase. So this is not one of those jobs that, my goodness, people have just gotten rich over. It's been status quo for a number of years. I think it's time for us to really stop, take a look, talk to the Chamber of Commerce, other business people around here, and say, what would be, other than what these other cities do, what does this type of city want to reflect the future leader of that, and come up with some value. Will it ever be what we're paying probably the superintendent or the leader of Metro or PPD or MED? Probably not. But 120-some thousand, you would be surprised at the number of, since this is my past profession, the number of superintendents in the surrounding areas. They wouldn't work for that. If you just give 120-some thousand, it'll take the mayor 4 years to do what basically, or 3 years for what a person would do, 1 year, no PPD. There's something is wrong here. Now, I'm not saying we need to blow this salary up, but we do need, my estimation, that's why I probably will not vote. And then if you look at the next one, dealt with the council, I put it, hey, let's hold us at 0, because then it doesn't look like I'm trying to be self-serving, so when it comes to council, I'm going to want a CPI of 3%. I said, no, freeze our salaries for 4 years, and the savings there you can apply that to the mayor's salary. And it'd be surprised how that would balance out. Because the mayor it's one job. Everybody around this table up here chooses to have a job, or like some of us who are retired, but we've had past experience, we can work another job. The mayor basically has to. And if any of you have ever followed her schedule, in which all of us have, just going to the nightly functions, even if it's there just to say hi and smile, that has enough to take a toll out of you. So that's one reason why I feel that price at 122 is too low. It needs to be brought up. I know I'm on the minority here, but that's how I feel. And by saying the council the next time around, ours would be level, that would sort of balance that thing out. So it doesn't look like we're self-serving, like we're trying to get our salaries up there, which I'm not. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gray, do you wish to be recognized?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. President. I chose the percentage of 3% over the consumer price index because some years, first of all, I guess I have questions as to whether we need to continue to tie this 3% to what we give to our employees and everyone else. I don't know if people recognize the extent of the amount of work that is done on this council, that each council member does almost on a daily basis. And so for me, 3%, and we can always, and once the next council gets in, and we've got to keep in mind that these numbers are for whoever wins election next time. This is not about us. So we've got to remember that, and we also need to remember the same thing for the mayor. We're talking about who gets elected next time, not who is now. And the 3% to me, I think, is appropriate for council members. And we, in the past, like when several of us first took office, we changed the calculation and gave ourselves 0 or gave back money to the city when we were in a crisis in 2009. So I think the 3% is appropriate for council members because of the kind of work that we do, the amount of time that we put in. And we can always, as a council, we can always go back and adjust that if we need to. But if we vote today for what would be the consumer price index, what if that comes in at 1.5%? I don't think that's fair to council members. I don't think it's fair to the mayor if the consumer price index comes in at 1.5%, maybe 2%. So I think, for me, I think the 3% is more appropriate, and that's why I suggested it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilmember Festerson, do you wish to be recognized?
Thanks, Mr. President. Consistent with my remarks last week and consistent with my position on this since being elected, I've never supported anything greater than a 3% increase. And I think it is worthwhile to point out, as Councilman Gray did, this is for our future mayor and future city council, as was every consideration prior to this, as determined by our city charter. So that's still my position today. I understand the rationale or the method by which amendments A and B are arrived at, one with an index and one with a 3% increase going forward, but I'm not supportive of them. I think they both bump up the mayor's salary 17% in 1 year, and then over that period of time would be about a 30% increase over 4 years for each of them. And I don't think we see that anywhere in city government or the private sector right now. So I'm not supportive of those, and that will also reflect my position on number 59.
Thank you. Councilmember Vice President Palermo, do you wish to be recognized?
No, Mr. President, just be echoing quite a bit of what we've already heard already, so thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion on item A? We'll take them one at a time alphabetically, and we'll see where they go. No further lights, roll call.
Festerson.
No.
Gray. Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Mr. President.
No.
Motion fails 2-5.
Is there a motion on item B? I'll second it, so you get a vote, Mr. Gray, my friend. Roll call.
Festerson.
No.
Gray.
Yes.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo.
No.
Mr. President.
No. Is there a motion on 58, originally proposed?
Can I see it? It was 4-3, or 3-4, failed.
Is there a motion on 58?
It'd be 58 as originally presented.
Yeah. Yes.
Motion to approve item number 58.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 4-3. Item 59, an ordinance to amend Omaha Municipal Code to establish the salary for council members of the City of Omaha for the years 2023 through 2026. A is amendment of the whole requested by council members Harding and Melton. B is amendment of the whole requested by council member Pauls.
Well, we have to have the public hearing again. Yeah. We will open up the public hearing again on item 59 for any proponents or opponents at this time.
Larry Store, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, 68132. Pretty much the same comment as earlier, except that after listening to the various members talk about the council salaries when we were on the mayor's topic, I'd like to point out that citizens, yes, we do have a right to vote you in or out, but other than that, we really have very little input. So I really don't know that we ought to be granting somebody in the future a big increase. I think you should be responsible for your own increases, your own decisions, your own lack of indecisions, and let the citizens have more input, more transparency with you at these bodies, which I understand is the intent of the Open Meetings Act. And I think we need more of that transparency before we just flat out say, with approval by a large increase in salary, that we approve of what you did, when a lot of us probably didn't approve. But I can't vote for anybody other than my own person. So I really don't have a lot of input other than at this microphone. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there anyone else that wishes to testify on this item?
Luis Jimenez, 2205 North 24th Street. I heard some comments that I want to respond to. I am in support of a raise, but a much larger raise than what has been discussed officially. I'm not convinced that raising your guys' salary in a large amount is going to have an outside impact besides compensating you for your services. We are talking about council members and the mayor who manage a budget that's close to $1 billion. And that represents a lot of activity. So I'm kind of was hoping that you guys would, think about what you're saying about this being for somebody else. Maybe not you guys. For the ones that get reelected, it would be a race. But yeah, I'm support. Thank you.
Thank you. Public hearing is closed. Does anyone wish to be recognized? We can go the same route if we do.
And I just want to clarify that this one, number 59, is just for city council. No one's proposing a set raise, an amount like we did for the mayor. This is either the original, which is 3%, Amendment A, which is using the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, and then B is just nothing at all. So there is no increase, large increase in salary. It's 3% CPI or nothing. So
Thank you.
just wanted to make that clarification.
Councilmember Harding.
I'll just repeat again because it seems to be lost sometimes that this is not for the current city council or for the current mayor. And by charter, it is our responsibility to do that. And so we don't set those for ourselves. We set it for the next body. I'll be supportive of A.
Thank you. Councilmember Pauls, do you wish to be recognized?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. You know, I came to the dance and I'm dancing by myself. I realize that, but I'm still trying to get the point across. And just so you understand, which I smile when we talk about all these percentages, but from 2001, if we go all the way to 2026, the average increase for the council would be 2.1. That's from 2001 all the way to 2026, 2.1. The mayor, from that same time, 2001 to 2026, 1.2. So when you talk about percentages, keep in mind, if you average them out over the years, they're not as high as, quote, that scary 3% or the CPI. Again, I understand where we're coming from, but I think once you make a statement, you have to follow through on that, and that's where I stand. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gray, do you wish to be recognized?
Mr. President, I'll just simply say that I'm not supportive of either of the amendments, and I will be supporting the original amendment.
Thank you. Councilmember Festerson.
My previous remarks stand.
Vice President Palermo.
No, Mr. President.
Okay, is there a motion on item A? Roll call.
Festerson.
No.
Gray. Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Mr. President.
No.
Motion fails 2 to 5.
Is there a motion on B? I'll second it for you so you get a vote. Roll call.
Festerson.
No.
Gray. Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo.
No.
Mr. President.
No.
Motion fails 3 to 4.
Is there a motion on 59 as originally proposed? Second, roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray. Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passes 4 to 3. One public hearing will be held on items 60 to 62 pertaining to the legislative package of the City of Omaha for the second session of the 106th State of Nebraska Legislature. Item 60, a resolution at the request of Councilmember Melton and the City Finance Department to introduce legislation to amend existing statutes relating to liquor licenses and their suspension for non-payment of taxes, fees, or special assessments. Item 61, a resolution at the request of Councilmembers Festerson, Melton, and Harding to support the State of Nebraska economic tax incentive legislation. Item 62, a resolution to designate Jack Chaloa as the city lobbyist.
The public hearing on items 60 through 62 begin at this time. We'll begin with Mr. Chaloha, the city's law department's lobbyist. And when we open it up to the public, I'd ask that you tell us which item number you're speaking on. Mr. Chaloha, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the council. Jack Chaloha, city lobbyist. Just wanted to say thank you for your attention on the city's 2020 state legislative package. There's only 2 action items per se, and the third one relating to me as your lobbyist is perfunctory, and I appreciate the endorsement on that as well. The first item, we would initiate a bill, meaning the city would take the lead on it relating to the liquor licenses. The second one, we would offer our support if it's approved for a bill that's already pending from the 2019 legislative session. And then finally, the last item gives me authority to act on the behalf of the city of Omaha, and I'll try to answer any questions you might have.
You didn't get your Omaha pin yet from
Not-
Mr. Dowding, our chief of
yet.
staff. How does anyone know you're from Omaha without your pin? It says so. Thank you, Mr.
get that.
Chaloha.
Thank you.
Are there any proponents that wish to testify in either 60, 61, or 62? Ms. Krieger.
Jennifer Krieger, Greater Omaha Chamber, 808 Conagra Drive, Suite 400. I'm here on item 61. Just a few brief remarks, if that's okay. I'd like to thank Councilman Festerson, Melton, and Harding for introducing this resolution. I'd also like to thank Mr. Chaloha for the collaborative relationship that we have down in Lincoln together. We're very appreciative of the partnership we have with the city and our economic development partnership and the work we do on your behalf. The Nebraska Advantage Act sunsets at the end of December 2020. We think it's very important that the legislature act quickly to implement a new program. We have to have an incentive program in place to remain competitive so we can go after additional jobs and investment. And as I said, we're hoping the legislature will act quickly in the upcoming session, so we would appreciate your support today. I also have, I'm here for any questions you have on the lobbying side, but I have Mark Norman here with me, who's the Senior Director of Client Services for the Omaha Chamber as well.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents on these three items? Are there any opponents on any of these three items?
Larry Store, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, 68132. I'm opposed to all three, basically, because I don't have any lobbyists. I don't know from this description whether they're representing my needs as a citizen or your needs or what. It really just doesn't define it to us. The World Herald doesn't tell us about it. And I don't know that many citizens have the time to go online and read all of the legal jiggle that we find on there. So I think we deserve to know what you're whispering in the legislators' ears and whether or not these meetings you're going to have with them to lobby them comes out of my billfold or out of yours. We don't get as much time before a microphone down there as we get here. And not very many people can afford to go down there anyway. So we'd like to know, are you representing us? And in what? If you're talking about TIF financing with number 51, that basically, to me, sounds like it raises my property taxes if you build something in my neighborhood. If I start a business, I can't defray costs, so I don't know that that's a real advantage to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents? The public hearing is closed. Councilmember Melton, you're recognized.
Oh, thank you. And I just want to clarify that Jack Taloa, who is our lobbyist, and Jack, I just wanted to call attention to the fact that you work for the city, you're a salaried employee of the city, where this isn't something. So we thank you for your work down in Lincoln. I know we're not whispering in senators' ears, as a lot of us, we do travel down there on our own dime, not reimbursed by the city. I know Councilman Gray, you go down quite a bit as well, all on our own dime, and there's no secret discussions, we testify. It's open to the public, and I want to thank, there are a number of people from our city departments that do the same. Jim Tyler has gone down every year in support of one of our carryover bills, and if you don't mind, it's not on our agenda because the carryover we voted on last year. So it's not on our agenda this year. And Mr. President, if you don't mind, can I just quickly go through those so that the public knows?
Certainly. This is the second year of the biennium coming up for the unicameral, so we have some carryover bills that we took positions on and voted last year, so go right ahead.
Thank you very much. One of the carryover bills is the Infrastructure Improvement and Replacement Assistance Act. That's using state sales tax, a turn back to help cities and public utilities, and that's with water infrastructure. A lot of people think we're just talking about the CSO here, but there's a lot of water infrastructure needs that our city continues to have in addition to the huge CSO projects that we have. And so this is a bill that actually would not just help the citizens of Omaha, but I think citizens across the entire state of Nebraska turn back tax, because water, potable water and clean potable water is probably one of those basic essentials that the government provides for the people. So I appreciate the continued support on that. And I've testified on that for the last 2 years, and Public Works has sent people down as well, taking their time and gas and everything else going down there. The second one is the state economic development assistant laws to allow the cities to have a local option sales tax refund. All the other cities, when those refunds are issued, it's on a level basis, except for the city of Omaha. Like a lot of legislation, for some reason, the city of Omaha is exempted from that. So every month, our finance department just gets a bill. It could be $100,000 and it could be $3 million, correct, Mr. Curtis?
Steve Curtis, City Finance, yes, that is correct.
And so what we're asking for is not to have that go down, but what we would like for our finance department is just have that level. So at the end of the year, we would, we would pay what we needed to pay, but we just want a level payment every month. So it really should be fiscally neutral, and that would be a big help. I know Councilmember Festerson proposed the Ground Emergency Medical Transport Act to allow claims to be made as a certified public expenditure. I'll let you discuss that more, but it's something we voted on and we continue to support this year. And the fourth thing that's carried over is support for a turnback tax for sports complexes that aren't enclosed. So it would be something like if we were going to develop Tranquility Park, which is something we've been working on for many years. Now that the road is finally going to be expanded and we're guaranteed that it's going to get expanded, that would be very important for the development along 120th Street from Maple to Fort. So those were all things we voted on last year that Jack will continue to support on our behalf, and that I know many of us will travel down to the legislature and support. So with that, I am asking for your support for number one. Today we denied a liquor license for 2 locations based upon just a blatant failure, just ignoring the tax, collecting the tax from the people and then keeping it and not turning it back. So that's what gets me. It's when people are collecting the tax from the consumers, from all of you who are walking into that store. You're paying them money that should be going to the city for our roads, for other things, and they're not doing it. So I want to codify that into the legislation regarding the liquor licenses so that we can work that out. The law committee has the ability to call them in and potentially suspend their liquor license if they continue basically to steal money from their customers, which is essentially what it is. And then I know Jen Krieger just testified about it, but we need that Imagine Act. As we just heard with TD Ameritrade, potentially we're losing TD Ameritrade, and they're going down to Dallas, Texas. And again, which the Omaha World Herald has reported, we do lose significant businesses. Everybody talks about property tax, but in all honesty, we're losing a lot of corporations to states that have no income tax. That's the bottom line. And so we have to have some kind of incentive package, or we're going to lose more businesses, which would equate to more jobs and more loss. So it has absolutely nothing to do with TIF, tax increment financing. It has to do with corporate incentives to keep jobs here and grow more jobs. So I appreciate the Chamber's support. And Jack, I appreciate all your work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Harding, do you wish to be recognized?
I'd be saying the same thing, so thank you.
Councilmember Pauls?
Jack and I get it.
Councilmember Gray?
I'll make a motion to approve items 60 through 62.
Can we do individual votes?
We'll be doing individual votes, so we'll take that as a
Let's
motion.
take individual vote. Motion to approve item 60.
Thank you, and that's the second. Mr. Festerson, do you wish to be recognized? Vice President Palermo? Okay. Roll call on item 60.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray. Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 60 is approved, 7-0.
Sir? Roll call?
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray. Harding. Melton. Pauls.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 61 is approved, 7-0.
Roll call?
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray. Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 62 is approved, 7-0. Item 63, an ordinance to accept the bid from All Seasons Turf and Tree LLC in the amount of $150,797.24 for grounds maintenance mowing of rights-of-way. A is a request from the Public Works Department to withdraw this item.
There's going to be a withdrawal on this, but since it is advertised, you would have a right to testify. Does anyone wish to testify on item 63? Seeing none, is there a motion to allow withdrawal? Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray. Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 64, an ordinance to extend a contract for 2 years with DPS LLC in the amount of $863,050 for the transportation of sludge cake project from the Missouri River and Papillion Creek Water Resource Recovery Facilities.
The public hearing on item 64 begins at this time. Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Next item.
Item 65, an ordinance to extend a contract for 26 months with the U.S. Department of Interior's Geological Survey for the City of Omaha Combined Sewer Overflow Monitoring in the amount of $581,300.
The public hearing on item 65 begins at this time. Before the public speaks, just some background information. As part of the CSO project, the city contracts with the U.S. Geological Survey to test our water quality downstream, so we can document to the EPA the improvements that we're making through the expenditure of your dollars through the CSO program. Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed.
Item 66, an ordinance approving the interlocal agreement with the Papio Missouri River NRD in the amount of $292,418 to participate in the North Omaha Trail Segment Project.
The public hearing on item 66 begins at this time. I was just wondering if you were here. Are there any proponents? Mr. Papio, NRD Chairman, Jim Thompson. Welcome to the Omaha
Jim
City
Thompson,
Council.
Papio NRD Chairman, 1001 South 35th Avenue. In addition to water quality and quantity, thank you, Amy, for giving a plug on that. But we also do trails, and this is another example you have before you to continue our trail system. We have 130 miles in the area as now, and this is significant because it opens up North Omaha, and we've got historically the waterways. We added trails, turned it into a system. We started to go east-west with the South Omaha Trail connecting Field Club. Hope to connect Turner Boulevard Trail shortly. It's another story. Unfortunately, as good as this proposal you have in front of you, there still will be some dotted lines that we will have to support in the future. We jointly with us, Papio NRD in the city. So I encourage your full support of this agreement. It's a great partnership, and I guess, again, beyond this particular action, I would encourage your full support as we connect these trails and make it a wonderful, dedicated system for those who walk and bike in Omaha. So, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
No, my question was answered.
Okay, thank you. Next item.
Item 67, an ordinance approving a tax increment financing redevelopment agreement with Pillar LLC for the 6121 Maple Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project Plan located at 6121 Maple Street in an amount up to $241,000.
The public hearing on item 67 begins at this time. Are there any proponents?
Don Seaton, Omaha City Planning. I'm here and available for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents?
Michael Sands, 1700 Farnham Street. On behalf of the developer, also here happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Next item.
Item 68.
Oh, wait, we have a council member.
Have my
Since
measuring
our
light
light
on?
system is off, we have to see hands, and I didn't
Yeah.
see him waving. So, Mr. Festerson, you're recognized.
Thanks, Mr. President. So I support this project, and we did support this as a body when I went through the redevelopment plan stage just recently. So it's a $1.2 million reinvestment in the Benson Business District at about 61st and Maple, and represents what I'm seeing as a second wave of new investment in the Benson Business District, several items of which are on our agenda, and some of which are installed in the pipeline. This one in particular is a mixed-use development, and also includes some renovations and public infrastructure investment. But as this stuff starts to to occur, and as density starts to increase in the area, we are looking at also parking options for this facility, and also one that's on our agenda that involves apartments. Them all being a neighborhood business district zoning that does not require parking necessarily, but we want to make sure and find the right balance of pedestrian use and parking for the local businesses there as these occur. So I have already met now with Ken Smith, our parking director here at the City of Omaha, to start analyzing the business district a little more intensely than we have in the past, realizing these things are coming, to see where those partnerships may exist with products like this, or with current city property, or the property that we've now deeded to the Business Improvement District to maintain for parking reasons, and hope to have some good suggestions going forward here shortly. A quick question for you, Mr. Sands. I noticed in Benson this week that some fencing has gone up around this particular site in anticipation for the reinvestment and the renovation to that property. Can you give me a better idea of timeline, when things will happen and when it will be complete?
Yeah, so what they're doing right now, I think, is primarily inside. Obviously, they won't be able to get to some of the street improvements. There's very few for this actual project, probably until maybe in the spring, but the general kind of timeline for completion is hopefully spring to summer of 2020, so about 6 months.
So the current fencing is securing the site for the interior renovations?
I believe so, yes.
Given that it's snowing today? And then secondly, I had some concern expressed by a constituent about the sidewalk there, just making sure it's still passable during this time frame. Can you make sure that it is still passable for pedestrians if the only purpose is to secure the site?
Certainly will. I will pass that along to my client and see that that happens.
I think it'd be important because we do have a lot of pedestrian traffic there, and especially during the night.
Sure.
And then I'd also just add to that this morning we had a conversation in Public Works Committee a little bit about when construction happens, regardless of where it happens, that we are maintaining access for pedestrians and others as those things occur. So we'll discuss that in more depth next week, I think, but that applies to here as well, so I appreciate your attention to that.
Absolutely. And Mr. Miller would like to be here today. He's in Washington, D.C., but I will certainly pass those comments along to him. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item.
Item 68, an ordinance approving a tax increment financing redevelopment agreement with Highlander Phase 3 LLC for the Nobility Point Highlander Phase 3 tax increment financing redevelopment project plan located at 3031 Blondo Street in an amount up to $200,000.
The public hearing on item 68 begins at this time. Are there any proponents?
Good afternoon, Bridget Hadley, City Planning, here to answer questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents?
Othello Meadows, 75 North, 2112 North 30th Street. Here to answer the questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed.
Item 69, an ordinance to approve the interlocal agreement with the Papio, Missouri River NRD and the Omaha Municipal Land Bank to expand and connect the city trail system with a portion of the now abandoned Omaha Belt Railway known as the Beltline Trail Project.
The public hearing on item 69 begins at this time. Are there any proponents?
Troy Anderson, representing the Omaha Municipal Land Bank. Mr. President, members of council, I just wanted to share a little more information about this interlocal agreement. More specifically, our role as the land bank in this sort of tri-party agreement. We are not a developer, nor do we have any intention of developing the property. In fact, we are actually, we've recently listed the properties for sale and are currently entertaining applications and development proposals for the subject properties. Along with those applications, we are requiring that those development proposals identify a 30-foot right-of-way in cooperation with their development plans. I'm telling you this because it may very well be that this agreement may need to come back to you all with some amendments. There's some language in the agreement that suggests that the land bank will be dedicating the property. Most likely the dedication of that right-of-way will come from some future developer. And number two, that the trail location and the trail design will also be subject to land bank approval. So there may be some amendments we need to bring back before you all, but just wanted to clarify our role in this, that we are simply the current landowner, have no intention of developing it now or any time in the future, but we will be working with developers hopefully in the very near future, to identify a trail location that can combine not only the trail, but also perhaps some workforce housing or other amenities that the neighborhood. And Jim Thompson and I have had a lot of really good conversations over the last couple of weeks. We feel as though we're on the same page, but there may be some nuances of that interlocal agreement that may need to come back to you in the form of an amendment in the near future. So, but otherwise, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Are there any other proponents? Mr. Thompson.
Jim Thompson, 1001 South 30th Avenue, representing the Papio Energy Board. Another tremendous project. This is the Beltline Trail, and it's going to connect as an arc from 40th and Hamilton, basically up to 31st and somewhere. Excuse me, it escapes me. But yeah, it's a trifold agreement with the land bank. We met with them, and hopefully the structure of the interlocal agreement you have before you allows us to, again, dedicate what we consider important, other than flood control and water quality, the connection of a trail system throughout the city of Omaha. So this particular stretch through the Beltline, which the Field Club Trail used to be a Beltline, a rail line that was abandoned, converted, and the pluses on that particular project I hope to see in the future, if I'm still on the board or live, on the Beltline Trail as well. So I encourage your full support, not only for this particular action, but as we continue to build these and connect these trail systems. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? Thank you. Next item.
Item 70, an ordinance requesting the renaming of public properties known as Jean Leahy Mall, Heartland of America Park, and the Lewis and Clark Landing to be named the Riverfront.
The public hearing on item 70 begins at this time. Are there any proponents? Mr. Dixon.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, council members. Roger Dixon with Mecca, 455 North 10th Street. Appreciate your consideration on this. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Oh, Mr. Festerson.
Thanks, Mr. President. Mr. Dixon, if you would. We talked a little bit about this in pre-council, but just for those that are watching to understand what we're doing here. So obviously this is part of the major renovation of the riverfront and our park system there. And what the agenda item is today is just to essentially brand the parks down there, three major parks, the riverfront, although the names for those individual parks are not changing and there's no sign changes or anything like that, correct?
This is all part of the branding process. The riverfront will become the umbrella. So it'll be Jean Leahy Mall at the riverfront, Heartland America Park at the riverfront, or Lewis and Clark Landing at the riverfront. All three could be the riverfront, or again, we're not changing park names, we're adding to them.
Great. And then as long as you're here, do you want to provide just a short update on how that's going? There's a lot of dirt moving down there. I'm sure folks would appreciate maybe, any thoughts on timeline and how things are going?
Right now, everything's going the way it's supposed to. The Mother Nature is always the one that creates issues for us, but Lewis and Clark Landing is probably online to still be late 21. Again, it depends on what happens, then everything else starts up with the overall project being done probably late third, early fourth quarter 23. So a lot of exciting things, and working with OJB. I have Katie Bass, Vice President of Parks, with us today too. So she's the one that's driving this boat for Mecca's side and does a great job for us. But HDR and all the different parties with Kiewit and such, it's an interesting project to watch. Me personally, I'm an arena convention center stadium guy, so now doing parks is a little bit out of my wheelhouse, but we're having fun doing it.
Great, thank you, and thanks for your work on that. It is a major project, and we're happy to be a partner in. And Katie, this is your first city council meeting, I think, so welcome, and we look forward to working with you as well.
Thank you. Councilmember Pauls.
Yeah, I just have a question. Since I like the beaches, the beach sand is still going to be there.
Urban Beach is still going to be there.
Okay, that's all I just wanted to hear. Thank you.
Oh, One might want to be careful jumping in the river, but the beach is going to do that.
Okay, thanks for that advice.
Thank you. Next item.
Item 71, an ordinance to approve the fiscal year 2019 COPS Law Enforcement Mental Health and Wellness Act grant in the amount of $99,841.
The public hearing on item 71 begins at this time. Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Next.
Item 72, an ordinance to approve an agreement with Douglas County in the amount of $109,442 for partial funding for one full-time misdemeanor prosecutor and one full-time liaison in the Douglas County Attorney's Office as part of the Douglas County Community Response Team.
The public hearing on item 72 begins at this time. Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Next item.
Item 73, an ordinance to approve the application for group long-term disability insurance with Lincoln National Life Insurance Company from January 1, 2020 to December 31st, 2022 in the amount of $164,051 per year.
The public hearing on item 73 begins at this time. Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed.
Item 74, an ordinance to approve an amendment to the master software license agreement with Zoll Data Systems, Inc. for software licensing for a term up to 5 years at an initial cost of $22,277.16 per year.
The public hearing on item 74 begins at this time. Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed.
Item 75, an ordinance approving the 18th supplemental agreement with Douglas County and the Omaha Douglas Public Building Commission to provide for the bond issuance in an amount of $22 million.
The public hearing on item 75 begins at this time. Are there any proponents?
Mr. President, members of the council, Paul Cohen, Administrator, Omaha Douglas Public Building Commission. This agreement will, proposal rather, will enable us to refinance our 2008, 2010, and 2014 bonds at current market rates, which we forecast to be lower than the ones we currently have in existence. The savings on these bonds will be about $900,000 over the balance of the 10-year period on the bonds, which will be used for further capital improvements in the complex. We ask for your consideration and approval. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed.
Item 76, an ordinance to amend Chapter 23 of the Omaha Municipal Code for negotiated changes with the Professional Fire Service Manager Association for the years 2019 through 2022.
The public hearing on item 76 begins at this time. Are there any proponents?
Good afternoon, David Graham, Omaha Labor Relations, here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents?
Mark McQueen, attorney with Baird Holmes, 1700 Farnham Street, act as lead negotiator for the city of Omaha. Dave and I have partnered up on these negotiations and others. I'm here in support of this agreement and wanted to provide you with a very brief summary that is going to sound very familiar to you. This is a 4-year deal. Covers the years 2019 through 2022. So the first year of the 4-year deal is essentially near completion at this juncture. Our primary objective on behalf of the city was to negotiate a transition to the high deductible health plan, which we have done. This particular group has agreed to transition to the high deductible health plan effective January 1, 2020. That's a significant moment in the city. When we began this relationship back in 2011, I know some of council members were there at that time when we used to use the term one city, one plan. At that point in time, it was a goal of ours to get all of the city employees under a single health care plan. With this agreement, we have done that, with one exception, the rank and file firefighters who, as you know, insure themselves through a fire trust, and the city only pays premiums to the fire trust. So all other city employees are under this high deductible health plan as of January 1, 2020. With that comes an increase in premiums. Employee premiums move from 7 to 10%. The deductibles, as the name implies, with a high deductible health plan go up significantly, several $1,000s for multi-person enrollees and a little over $1,000 for a single coverage. Now, in order to protect employees against that potential out-of-pocket loss, as you know from previous briefings, the city has agreed to make lump sum contributions to the employee's health savings account so that they don't incur the additional expense in connection with that transition. Now, in consideration for that transition, we have agreed to increase the wage rates for the fire command staff to the tune of 3% per year. That's exactly consistent with the previous patterns that we've established with other bargaining units, roughly 6 of them over the last several years. Other incidental changes that you should be aware of, there's currently 6 steps in the pay progression plan for the fire command staff. The last 3 of those steps, they advance at 18-month intervals. We've reduced that to 12-month interval so as to be consistent with the police command group. We've also slightly modified the method by which the fire command staff can take vacation in the last 2 weeks of a calendar year. Sometimes that, depending upon when the payroll year ends, that puts them in the next payroll year, and they could be faced with a loss of vacation by taking vacation in those last 2 years. So we've adjusted that so they have the same vacation entitlement or scheduling benefit as the other civilian bargaining units. We've also entered into a separate memorandum of understanding with this group so that we didn't need to negotiate a change if the city implements any changes to its 457 benefit plan. There's currently an analysis underway being spearheaded by Finance and Mr. Curtis as to the adequacy of the current 457 and related benefit plans. That analysis will not be complete until sometime in early 2020. At that juncture, there may or may not be changes. If there are changes, we wanted to ensure that the fire command staff would have the benefit of those changes if they want them without having to go through the negotiation process. So we entered into a separate MOU to provide for that automatic eligibility should there be changes pursuant to the current study that's underway. There's also a kind of a cleanup correction to the code apparently in the 2010 or pre-2010 time frame. There was a little bit of an omission that created a distinction between the fire command and police command with respect to normal service retirement before the age of 50. That's been cleaned up at the recommendation of city legal, so that's just a cleanup item. Last thing that I would say, these negotiations were very collaborative, very professional. That's as good as it gets when it comes to negotiating contracts. So I wanted to compliment Chief Olson and the fire command staff. They were great to work with, and I hope very much that you can support this agreement.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed.
Non-action items, items 77 through 109, do not require public hearing or city council consideration at this meeting, but will be placed on a future agenda for public hearing and/or vote. The reason for non-action is noted after the item on the agenda, as well as the date the item is expected to appear on agenda for consideration.
On behalf of the Omaha City Council, wish you all a happy Thanksgiving and safe travels.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Harding.
Yes.
Melton. Melton. Pauls. Palermo.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Meeting is adjourned at 3:23.